Welcome to this video where we are going to go over the Retell lecture part of the speaking section, and I have some really awesome tips in store for you guys. Again, similar to the describe image, we're going to break it down into two sections. In the first section, I'm going to give you a general overview, and in the second section, we're going to go over some structures, some templates, and some solved examples. So let's jump straight into it. Now, first, let's look at what to expect in this section. Now you'll hear a lecture, and after the lecture is over, you get 10 seconds where after that you need to speak into the microphone and retell the lecture in your own words, and you have to complete your answer within 40 seconds or between 30 to 40 seconds. You get around 3 lectures in this section, and the lecture can even be an interview or conversation between two people. And sometimes you even have background noises in the lecture as well, so be aware of that. You also get an image displayed, and sometimes even people have said that there's a short video displayed, but for the most part you want to be paying attention to the actual audio clip and not any of those other elements. You again scored on pronunciation, oral fluency, and content. Pronunciation and oral fluency you probably already know by now. On content, to score 5 on the scale of 0 to 5, you need to retell all the points of the presentation and describe characters, aspects, and actions, their relationships, their underlying development, implications, and conclusions. So even in the retell lecture, if you have some sort of implication or conclusion or any sort of opinion or based on the lecture that you heard, that's going to be an answer that gets rated high on content. Okay, the goal for you in retell lecture is similar to describe image. You need to speak for 35 seconds without any pauses and hesitations, and obviously you need to be speaking grammatically correct sentences while you're doing so. You have only 40 seconds to speak, so make sure that you include all of the main points in the lecture. If you repeat ideas and you correct or you hesitate, you lose valuable time and you lose your point. So keep talking and ignore any mistakes that you make. Obviously the goal is to speak without pauses, but if you do make a hesitation or if you do have a repetition, you just carry forward and don't get stuck. Now this section involves listening and note-taking skills as well. So if your ability to listen is low, if your listening skills are low, you're going to find it difficult to repeat the lecture as well and take down notes. So try to understand what is being said, and if you really find this is an issue for you, try improving your listening skills so that you're able to better understand, and if you better understand, you'll be able to better speak as well. Okay, now we're getting into the core part, which is how to take effective notes, which is what I believe is the most important part of the retell lecture. If you do not have good quality notes, there's no way that you're going to do well in this lecture unless you have like super strong memory, and just by taking down good notes, you can dramatically increase how you perform in this section. Now keep in mind that the lecture is between 1 to 1.5 minutes in most instances, and you need to give an answer only for 30 to 40 seconds. So you do not need to cover all the points mentioned in the lecture in your summary as well. Do not worry if you miss out on a few points as you are giving your answer. You're not going to be able to cover all the points. Even if you cover maybe 30% of what is being said, you should be fine. Your ability to use notes to speak clearly is key. If you don't have good notes, it's going to be very difficult for you to give a proper answer. Often what ends up happening is that people write down notes. This used to happen to me as well. I used to write down like several notes, but when the time came to speak, I was to be, okay, what am I supposed to say right now? It wasn't clear what was I supposed to, how to form a clear sentence based on the notes that I had, and it was a very inefficient way of doing it. So what I suggest is to take longer notes of 4 words or more, and that is much better than taking shorter notes of between 1 to 3 words. What happens is when you take a short note, you also need to take those words and form a meaningful sentence, right? So when you have a short note, it's going to be difficult for you to come up with an entire sentence. But if you maybe write down 4, 5, or 6, or even 7 words of what the speaker is saying, it becomes much more easy to like read off that note and form a sentence where you do not have hesitations. And as long as you have 5 long notes, at least 5 long notes. That should in most cases be enough content for you to talk about for 30 to 40 seconds. So we are going to, when we do the example, I'm going to show you how I do it, but test it out and see. We've seen that taking longer notes always works better. And many people have a question about the content, where if I repeat exactly what the lecturer is saying, is it going to go against me? We haven't seen that to be the case. So even if the lecturer says spring is a beautiful time, and if you say the same thing, spring is a beautiful time, and you just add a few other words around it, we've seen that not to be an issue. Try to include any facts, figures, numbers, or dates. So as this is relatively easy to note down. So if the speaker says something about this bridge was built in the year 1960, so that's a very simple thing to note down, the year 1960. So definitely include any specific facts or figures or dates in your answer if possible. You only have 10 seconds before you speak. So after your lecture ends, you have 10 seconds. So during that 10 seconds, you can maybe finish writing down a few notes, but also maybe keep at least 5 to 3 seconds to quickly kind of review and scan through your notes so you get a sense of, okay, what am I going to be speaking? Some other key tips during the Retell lecture is that your smooth English at a natural rate has higher weightage over content. So do not worry about content too much. As long as you're speaking something related to the topic, will be fine. So do not talk about life in Mars. If the topic is about conserving nature, you're going to get 0 points. Just broadly stay on the topic all the way. So it's very difficult for you to score low on content unless you're speaking something completely off topic. Now again, this might seem like a difficult section at first, but remember that the Retell lecture, similar to the describe image, is all about practice. The more you practice, the better your improvements are going to be. And again, this was something that I kind of struggled with as well, but once I learned that by taking longer notes, and I also used a few sentence stems that will go in part 2, if you use those in combination, it's like very difficult for you to do poorly in this part of the exam. So in the next part of the exam, we're going to go over some phrases that you can use, and we'll see how by using those phrases in addition to content or the notes that we take, it's super easy to perform well in this part of the exam. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in part 2 soon, where we go over the specific examples.